Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Today I'd like to just update the national population on a number of ongoing matters and projects of the Ministry of Finance. I will start with property tax. The information available to me as of the 4th of November 2024 tells me that so far payments have been made for 104,102 properties, and the total payment received is $105,609,387. The way the payments have been received by corporation is quite variable. Interestingly, of that 105 million, 13 million has come from the Kuva Tabaki Talparo Corporation, another 13 million from the Diego Martin Regional Corporation. This is to say residents who live within those regions, the boundaries of those regions. The largest payment has come through the Tunapuna Piarco region at $18 million, and then smaller amounts going down. For example, Samuel Laventil, 9 million, San Fernando, 9 million, Port of Spain, a bit on the small side at 3 million, but Port of Spain has a small population. Pinel de Bay, 8 million. So it's going quite well. Chaguanas, 9 million, and so on. So that as time goes by, we expect this number to get up to where we expect it to be. At this point in time, we're looking at about $191 million in all. So we've crossed the 50% mark in terms of what we expect at this point in time. I'd also like to repeat that the deadline for the delivery by the Board of Inland Revenue of property tax notices to property owners has been extended to November the 29th, 2024. We had previously extended this deadline for delivery of notices, and this notice is not the valuation notice, it is the property tax notice. There's a difference between the two, and I mean, it's obvious to me I have to keep emphasizing this point, that the annual rental value notice that persons would get from the valuation division will simply tell you what your annual rental value is. But that is not a tax notice. The tax notice comes from the Board of Inland Revenue, and it's clearly marked at the top of it. If you look at any of these notices, you would see either the information relating to the valuation division, or you would see coming from the Board of Inland Revenue a document with the coat of arms, of course, Ministry of Finance, notice of assessment. I have a sample in front of me, signed by the Commissioner of the Board of Inland Revenue. And that notice is the one that will tell you what your tax is, which is 2% of the annual rental value. So I am aware that people continue to get a little mixed up between a notice of annual rental value and a property tax assessment notice. So that the deadline that has been extended is the deadline for the Board of Inland Revenue to deliver property tax assessment notices, and that is extended to the 29th of this month. As a result, we have extended the time for payment without penalty from the 29th of this month, which it was, to the 20th of December, which is more or less the last working day before the Christmas period. I also want to remind and to inform that we now have Lynx machines working in all district revenue offices throughout the country. And these are located in Chaguanas, Vancouver, Labray, Mayaro, Point Fortin, Princestown, Rio Claro, Sangre Grande, Siparia, San Fernando, Inland Revenue Tower in Port of Spain on Wrightson Road, and Tuna Una. And not only property tax can now be paid by links at all of these offices that I've just read out, but you can also pay Green Fund levy, health surcharge, hotel accommodation tax, individual income tax, value-added tax, and a series of other taxes can now be paid via links or check or cash at all of the regional offices. Okay? So that is property tax. And we do expect that as we move towards December 20th, we'll get close to this $190 million estimate of the total we expect to collect at this time, because we are now online with First Citizens Bank. So persons who have online bank accounts with First Citizens can now pay their property tax online. Republic Bank, I am told, will come on stream live this week by Friday latest. So those who have online banking with Republic Bank will be able to pay their property tax online by the end of the week, and the other banks are going to fall in shortly thereafter, Scotiabank, RBC, etc. I want to repeat that if you don't get your property tax notice, and I am referring to the one I just spoke about, which has notice of assessment and is signed by the Commissioner Board of Inland Revenue, if a property owner does not receive this, they will not be subject to any penalties and interest. And I will have to make some appropriate amendments to the law to allow those persons to pay at a future date. At this time, they don't have to pay once they don't get it by the 29th of November, the end of this month. Okay? Because persons are a little worried. They haven't received a tax assessment notice, or they have an old one with the 3% rate, or they only have a valuation notice. They're worried. Do not worry. If you have not received this, you do not have to pay at this point in time. So that's property tax. With respect to the Revenue Authority, well, as you would know, we were successful in the legal action, the lawsuit in the Privy Council, and the Privy Council has upheld the constitutionality of the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority Act in its entirety and dismissed all challenges to that legislation. So the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority is proceeding now to operationalize, and it is engaged in a recruitment exercise at this point in time. There are a number of public servants who have already indicated their willingness to be transferred and be employed with the TTRA, so that process is ongoing. And I am quite satisfied that in this fiscal year, but next calendar year, of course, in calendar 2025, that the TTRA will immediately become up, well, not immediately, will become operational and will start to execute its strategic plan. So that's where we are with the TTRA. We are moving swiftly ahead to operationalize that authority, consistent with that result at the Privy Council. With respect to other matters, well, I can give you the latest data I have on the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, for example. The stock market in the United States, where a lot of the equities and so on, the investments of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund are invested, is very volatile because of United States elections. So that the market has actually been down over the last couple of days, but notwithstanding that, as of the end of September, we had the end of October, we had $6.1 billion in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. With respect to government finances, we are managing. We are in some, I would call it tightness, because if I look at the price of oil today, the price of Brent, well, it's gone back up in the last week or so. It had dropped below 70. It's now almost $76, $75.67. That's Brent. WTI is $72.15. Natural gas continues to be depressed at $2.76, but it's consistent with our budget forecast because the Henry Hub price of natural gas, of course, is not what we receive. We currently receive a price that is based on 4 different indicators. Henry Hub is one of them. But you also have the Japan-Korea market price, or marker as it is called, and you also have the NDP marker as it is called in the UK, and there's also a European marker that we use, and there's also the price of Brent. So the current prices that we get for natural gas are based on these 5 different things. So Henry Hub, European marker, English marker, Japanese marker, and the price of Brent. And as you would have seen, we have been very conservative in this year's budget in terms of the budget prices. We went with a price less than $4, a net back price. So the net back price is the combination of all of these markers and takes us back to the price of the wellhead using these various markers. And the Japanese marker, the British marker, and so on, they're doing quite well. So if, for example, I go and I look right now, I'm actually going online to take a look and see what the price is in Japan and Korea. And whereas, for example, Henry Hub is $2.76, the December 2024 price for natural gas in Japan and Korea is $13.47. So you see the difference. So that we should be able to achieve our budget targets both for oil and for natural gas. Of course, volumes are down. Production is not as high as it should be. Gas is keeping its own at 2.6 billion cubic feet per day, and oil is going up actually. Oil has hit a plateau at the bottom and is going back up. So that we do expect that we will see an increase in oil production over the next couple of months. One of the major oil producers had a pipeline problem which they have resolved, and they now increased their output by at least 3,000 barrels a day. So oil is going back up above the 50,000 a day level. So basically that's it. I will now open up myself for any questions that the media may have.
Thank you, Minister. Before we proceed, I kindly ask our media reps to keep your questions relevant and be sure to identify yourself before you pose your question. If you have a question, if you can utilize your raise hand so that we can acknowledge you, please.
I would like to see them too if they don't have to hide.
Okay. Ryan, you may go ahead.
Right.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Ryan from Newsday.
Mr. Ryan Hamilton Davis, Trinidad Newsday, concerning the property tax. Given the figures that you put as far as the payments and stuff like that, are there any initial thoughts on what the revenue would be used for at this point? Are there any discussions on that as well?
Well, I did indicate in the budget that the property tax that we're collecting will be given to the regional corporations, which they would use for goods and services and their development program only. They would not be allowed to use it for personal expenditure. So we will distribute this money to the regional corporations in due course within the next couple of months. I may have to do a little tweaking of the legislation to allow me to do that. But that's the plan. I announced it in the budget.
All right, and I have one that's relatively a little bit off topic. It's concerning
Ryan, you know you're famous for that. And you know we have to stay on topic. So let me hear what it is first.
Well, it's actually coming from a batch release. They said in a release this morning that commercial banks are obligated to foreign exchange at the right.
Well, Brian, I haven't read that release.
Yeah, I'm ready. All right, so no problem. I defer to someone else.
I would no problem. I'll look at it as after this press conference, and I'll see whether I should issue a press release or something to deal with it. Okay?
Excellent, no problem.
Thank you. Next reporter.
Hi, morning. Morning, Minister Joel Julian from the Express newspaper.
Good to see your face, Joel. You were hiding before. Pardon? What's happening?
Joel, you go ahead.
Yeah, all right, Minister. Just want to firstly start off with the issue of the property tax.
Sure.
You mentioned that all the commercial banks have begun accepting.
No, one. FCB is live, and Republic Bank is scheduled to go live by Friday of this week, if not before. Okay?
Yeah, and what is your thoughts on that? Finally seeing this sort of inclusion in terms of making it a little more accessible to persons. What are your thoughts?
Well, it wasn't easy because, as I've explained before, and I want to explain again, property tax is revenue, so that you can't deduct a service charge from revenue. If you pay your phone bill or your electricity bill online, you're going to get a charge, and the service provider may not get the full amount. They may get, just like in a store, when you're going to use your debit card, you know, the item may cost $100. The bank may take out $2 for providing that service through links. The problem with revenue is you can't deduct anything from it. So that what we have decided to do is that the government in the first instance will pay the service charge on top of the tax. So let's say your tax was $1,000 a month. Sorry, a year. I shouldn't say that month at all. $1,000 a year, $80 a month, and you pay the $1,000. There would be a service charge associated with the transaction using the FCB online platform or the Republic Bank online platform, Scotiabank, etc. We have decided to pay that, the government, in the first instance, to get this whole process going. And that was the challenge. The revenue laws make it very difficult for us to transmit that revenue from the person who pays to the treasury. And that was the complication, but we've solved it.
Thank you. I believe Andrea has a question. Next reporter, Andrea.
Hi. Are you hearing me?
Yes, but I'm not seeing you.
Yes.
Why is not coming on?
No problem, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So Andrea Perez was from The Guardian and CNC3. We just would like to know if the central bank provides at least US $1.2 billion a year to commercial banks to address the gap between demand for and supply of foreign exchange. What does that support mean for the depletion of TNT's net foreign reserves, and is that support sustainable?
Interesting question, but it is not. That's not all that is provided. I don't know who did the research for you for that question, but they should have looked at the total foreign exchange that is injected into the system, because the forex that is used, that's provided through the Exim Bank and so on, that's also the government's foreign exchange. The central bank injects forex, but it doesn't. That forex does not belong to the central bank. It belongs to the government. The central bank is simply the custodian and manager of that foreign exchange. And if one looks at what is really going on, one would see that the amount of foreign exchange, I actually pulled up something here. 2023, the total injection through the Exim Bank and through the central bank was close to $2 billion, actually a little more than $2 billion. And we've been averaging around there 1.8, 1.9, sometimes 2. We went to $2.4 billion quite recently per year, US. That does deplete the reserves, of course. But we've been facing this situation since we came in 2015, and we've managed it. We've managed the process where we have not run out of foreign exchange. So, of course, the injection of foreign exchange through the central bank, through the Exim Bank, etc., of course, that draws down on the reserves. But we've come up with many different innovative ways of replenishing those reserves, and this is why we still have almost $6 billion in reserves after 9 years, and especially after COVID, where we had to use quite a bit of foreign exchange.
Okay, I have another question. Does CAL, TSTT, NFM, and PARIA receive forex from the Exim Bank? And if not, why do they access foreign exchange from? And how much forex do these 4 state companies need on an annual basis?
Again, I don't know who's writing those questions for you. You're talking a little too fast. Slow it down and repeat what you just said.
Andrea, can you repeat your question?
Slowly.
Slowly.
She gone?
She's still here.
Hi, Andrea. Can you repeat the question for the minister?
You hearing me now?
Yes,
Yes.
we are. If you
Slow. Talk slower, please.
So CAL, TSTT, NFM, and PARIA.
Wait. You're not talking slower. In fact, you're talking faster. So I mean Caribbean Airlines, National Flour Mills, PARIA Fuel Trading, and what was the other one? TSTT.
Receive forex from the Exim Bank, and if not, where do they access foreign exchange from? And how much forex do these 4 state companies need for an annual basis?
All right, next time you'll send your questions in advance in writing. I certainly would not have that level of detail in my head or even in my documentation. I had no idea what question you're going to ask with that level of specificity. However, we have another window called state enterprises. So that in addition to the 2 Exim Bank windows, essential imports, manufacturers, central bank direct injection into the commercial banks, we have another window for state enterprises. So that state enterprises that need forex, we provide it to them. And that's how we get up to the $2 billion mark in total. Okay, they don't go to the Exim Bank.
Okay. Next reporter.
And in any event, I'm not sure about National Flour Mills. I mean, I don't know how that came inside there. I think they handle their own stories. I do know that TSTT depends on us for some foreign exchange, PARIA, and I'm not sure about Caribbean Airlines either. I think I am not aware that they have ever come to us for foreign exchange because I believe they're a net foreign exchange earner. But that is something that I can check. Certainly, I've never seen anything from NFM. Certainly, we do assist TSTT and we do assist PARIA. Not sure about Caribbean Airlines. I don't think so.
Next reporter.
Hi, good morning, Minister Sonal Lala, TTT News. Minister, you talked a couple of weeks ago, I believe, about Tobago in terms of property tax and what would be collected. I think you mentioned that it would be collected in a special fund or something of the sort. Any progress on that? And would there need to be discussions with the THA in terms of how that would be collected from them and allocated?
Well, I didn't say anything of the sort. What I said is that the Tobago House of Assembly Act in Schedule 5 requires that all revenue collected in Tobago is retained by the House of Assembly for its use and deposited into the THA account in its bank in Tobago. So just like income tax, value-added tax, stamp duty, property tax will also be collected in Tobago by the THA and kept by the THA for its use. Same thing as all other taxes.
Hi, Minister. Good morning, Joel again. Just have a couple of questions, right? So one of the issues that you raised in the budget is that you said that you were looking at legislation,
Yes.
the introduction of legislation to
Yes.
encourage like energy sector companies
Yes.
to pay their taxes in US dollars. Can you give us an idea what the progress has been in terms of conversation? Has any conversation begun with with either the energy chamber or any stakeholders with respect to that? And also, for the past week, there has been a lot of conversation around Forex. Are you, as a minister, satisfied with how the Forex situation is being handled in Trinidad?
Well, firstly, let me clear up some misconceptions, some myths, some misinformation, some of it obviously deliberate, because it's been spoken about by people who do know better. The Minister of Finance does not distribute foreign exchange. I don't have a pool of foreign exchange in my office or in this building or in the Treasury where when someone requires foreign exchange, they apply to the Minister of Finance or the Permanent Secretary in Finance or anything like that. That's not how it's done. When taxes are paid in US dollars, they go into a special account at the central bank, and that constitutes the country's or the government's foreign reserves. So that's how we earn US dollars. We also get US dollars when we borrow from multilateral international agencies, international banks, and so on. That goes into that same foreign reserve account. The central bank then, from time to time, every 3 weeks or so, sometimes every 2 weeks, would make an intervention and release foreign exchange to the commercial banks based on a formula that goes back 10 years. And it's based on the size of the bank, the number of branches that they have, the number of customers that they have, and so on. So that each bank gets a proportion of that amount. Let's say the central bank distributes 100 million US dollars every 2-3 weeks to the commercial banks. One, maybe the largest bank, maybe Republic, might get 20% of that, so 20 million, and then FCB might get 15 million, Scotia might get 17 million. It all depends on the size of the bank, the number of customers it has, number of branches it has, its activity. It's a formula. It's a formula that has been in existence for many, many, many years. So the central bank does that every couple of weeks. And they say in the distribution, they indicate the rate, of course, the rate at which the banks can sell it at, which would be the prevailing rate on the particular day. And they also indicate that preference must be given to trade. And after trade would come other things. Now, trade is really commerce, it's really business. After that would come preference being given to medical expenses overseas, tuition for students studying overseas. The category that would not receive any kind of preference at all is if for example, somebody wanted to buy a condominium in Miami. They would hardly ever get part of that distribution going into the commercial banks. It's an honor system, and this system has been in place for 25 years, where it is expected that the banks would exercise responsibility, exercise equity, justice, and all that sort of thing in the distribution. Now, we can go to the other extreme, which we have not done yet, where we can particularize, for example, that a percentage of this $100 million US that is put in every 2-3 weeks should go to small and medium enterprises, should go to education, should go to medical expenses, should go to travel, should go to imports for manufacturing and all that. We can do that. And that is what I mean by we are going to have a discussion with all stakeholders, not just the energy companies. That's another matter. I just thought I would capture everything. I'll come to that at the end. So we are going to talk to the Chambers of Commerce, the TTMA, and various other interest groups, and ask them whether they believe this honor system that has been in force for the last 25 years should change into a more regulated and a more structured thing, whereby the central bank would now have categories of distribution for foreign exchange, and I expect I'll be able to complete those discussions maybe by the end of this year. And then we'll see whether we change the format by which the Forex is distributed. But I want to make it crystal clear that this Minister of Finance and no Minister of Finance before me has any access to any foreign exchange to distribute to anybody. From time to time, I may get a letter asking me for foreign exchange based on a misconception, obviously. They think it's me. It's not me, okay? And then when we send the Forex to the Exim Bank, for example, we just agreed that we would give the Exim Bank $25 million US per month of the government's foreign exchange for them to distribute for essential imports, and there's a whole list. As I said, we modified that list. We've taken out some items that were considered essential during COVID, like face masks, respirators, hand sanitizer, and so on. We no longer believe that that should fall into the essential category, where we've left food, we've left pharmaceuticals, and certain hygiene products that we consider to be essential inside of there. We're going to keep looking at that and see whether we need to add or delete from that particular group of items that qualify for essential imports. But I don't get involved. I don't call the Exim Bank and say, give so-and-so US dollars. I'm not involved. They have a formula. They have a well-structured system where, for example, when you are requesting foreign exchange from the Exim Bank for imports or manufacturing, you have to produce evidence that you're a manufacturer, that you have an invoice coming from a foreign supplier, that you are exporting your product, that you are repatriating your foreign exchange. It's a not very complicated thing, but it works very, very, very well. And it has helped many small, in fact, 80% of the foreign exchange customers at the Exim Bank are small and medium enterprises, not the large ones at all. In fact, the Exim Bank goes out of its way to help these small enterprises. So I just want to make it clear that the Ministry of Finance does not distribute foreign exchange. There's no provision for that. There's no law that will allow that. Okay? I can give guidelines to the central bank in terms of whatever instructions it may give to the banks with respect to the categories that should be given preference for distribution of foreign exchange by the commercial banks. We already have a well-structured system with Exim Bank, so we don't need to tweak that at this point in time. With respect to the inflow now, which is the question you are asking, it stands to reason that all taxes paid by energy companies that do not sell their products locally. I mean, an oil company sells its oil internationally. Atlantic LNG sells a very small amount of its product here for TNTech to generate electricity. Well, the power producers, not TNTech per se. But all of these energy sector, petrochemical companies, for example, and so on, they earn their income in US dollars. So it only stands to reason that they should pay their taxes in US dollars. And this has not been happening. And it's been a very well-kept secret. And therefore, I will be talking to them over the next couple of months to encourage them to pay their taxes in US dollars. Because if they do, it boosts the reserves, obviously. And then if we introduce this new system, well, let's not call it new, restructured system, where based on consultation with stakeholders, we come up now with categories that should benefit from the government's injection of Forex. We'll have more Forex, put more into the system, but in a much more structured way.
Yes, I do have two questions from Nadaline Singh, Tobago Channel 5. She's asking, if the price of oil and gas is fluctuating, would this affect the spend outlined in the budget?
No.
Second question is, what is being done to ensure that Tobago businesses have access to foreign exchange?
Well, I don't know how to describe that question. I was going to say difficult or interesting. I am not aware of the mechanism by which Tobago businesses access foreign exchange. I don't know if they go to the Exim Bank. I don't know if they go to FCB, for example. And one of the interest groups that I will be talking to will be the Tobago Chamber, of course. Until I will get that information out of them. And then we'll see whether we could fashion something for them.
Yes, reporter.
Hi, Minister Andrea again. I just piggybacking off of Admiral's comments.
You'll talk slower this time?
Yes, I promise. I would like to know if you have any proof that commercial banks are making Forex available to their preferred customers rather than distributing Forex equitably.
Now, look at the monkey pants you put in here. Under the Financial Institutions Act, it would be an offense for a bank to tell me how much Forex they're giving their customers. So I'm afraid I'm unable to get that information. I can ask the central bank to look into it. But even they would not be able to tell me in any specific way because they'd be breaking the law as well. So.
Minister, I know you mentioned earlier this week or last week that you'll be going to France for the OECD.
Tomorrow, actually.
What exactly the trip entails, and there's speculation about who will be holding on for you as you are outside of the country.
Okay, I can tell you who's holding on for me. The person who always holds on. The person who always holds on for me is holding on for me this week, which is the Minister Alison West. She's held on for me since ever, okay? Since she became a minister. With a few exceptions now and then, once the Prime Minister took the portfolio, I don't know if she was out of the country or she had other acting appointments or whatever. She's a sort of fallback acting person for me, so I deal with that. And then the reason why I'm going to Paris is to sign a very, very important treaty called the Mutual Assistance in, it's essentially tax administration, sharing of information in tax administration. And you're not allowed to sign this treaty unless you have reached a certain point in terms of becoming compliant with the Global Forum and the European Union. So for the last several years, we have asked the OECD, which is where the Global Forum is located. Global Forum is a department within the OECD in Paris. We've asked them to allow us to sign this treaty because once you sign the treaty, then you can have tax sharing arrangements with all of the countries that are members of that. It's a convention actually, over 100 countries. They have not allowed us before to sign it because they said we weren't ready. Our laws were not up to standard. The Inland Revenue Division was not compliant and so on. We've now got to the point where we've crossed the threshold and therefore I am going to Paris to sign that convention, which is a huge step along the way in getting us off the EU blacklist. Now let me explain the difference between the EU blacklist and the Global Forum list. The EU piggybacks on the Global Forum. So the Global Forum is the organization that looks around the world at countries that are compliant or not compliant in terms of sharing tax information. Automatic exchange of tax information, for example, with other revenue authorities in the rest of the world. If the Global Forum decides that Trinidad and Tobago, for example, is not compliant, then the EU would automatically put Trinidad and Tobago on its non-compliant list or blacklist, as it is also called. By becoming compliant with the Global Forum, we should automatically come off the EU blacklist. I'm also going to EU headquarters on the following day to meet with the top officials involved in the management of their non-compliant blacklist. And again, this will be the day after I've signed the treaty, so we can show them that we've made significant progress, and therefore we are going to request that we go on to something called a grey list, because the EU has two lists, a black list, which is the most severe, of course, and a grey list where they recognize that you're making progress towards coming off the list, and then you come completely off the list. So I'm going to EU headquarters in Brussels the following day to meet with EU officials to show them that I've just signed the treaty with the Global Forum, and we now would like to be put on the EU grey list, which would, again, would be significant progress.
So you have time for more questions.
Okay.
So we also have the situation, I know you would have intervened in terms of the situation with Caribbean Airlines and the pilots. We also have ongoing situation with the port. I know the port falls under the purview of the Minister of Works and Transport, but these ministries need to liaise with
Since you know that, Joel, since you know that the port falls under the Minister of Works and Transport, I would suggest that you
Have you
communicate
had
with
any
him.
conversation?
No, I'm sorry. I'm not involved in that matter. The Minister of Works is fully in charge of the situation at the port. It's not a matter for the Minister of Finance at this point in time. I think you should ask him.
Also, one of the things that stood out also, you spoke about the divestment of Clico.
Yes.
Can you give us an update with respect to that? And I know Clico would have paid like $1 billion dividend. Are you all rethinking the plan to divest Clico? What can you tell us about
Right,
that?
Mr. Julian, you're asking me multiple questions, and you're not waiting for my answers. Let me deal with the Caribbean. That's okay, I'm not vexed. I'm just going to slow down. With respect to Caribbean Airlines, I was very happy that I was able to settle the first dispute, which was the 2015 to 2020 period. There was a lot of to-in and fro-in, and in fact, there was something floating around that had absolutely nothing to do with me, but one of my challenges, I'm trying to use a nice word, is that everybody says it's him, right? So there was something floating around where somebody had offered or had mentioned to the pilots that for some of the years after 2020, they would get a 0% increase. I did not agree with that, although I was being blamed unfairly for it without my knowledge. I didn't even know this was going on. And that is why we decided, look, let's settle the first period and let's make an offer for the second period as well, which is the 2020 to 2023 period of the 4%, so 4 and 4. So I was really happy I was able to get that out of the way, because there was so much misinformation and scapegoating, as always happens, where I am concerned, unfortunately. So let me move on now to Colonial Life. Colonial Life has significant cash reserves, and this is why, retained earnings actually, this is why they were able to pay us a dividend. They paid $1 billion, we got $500 million, and the liquidator got $500 million. We are going to divest Clico. We see no reason why we should hold on to it. It's not of strategic importance to us. And now that, the company is well on its way to dealing with divestment of its assets and so on, we see no need to keep that company at all. We are still owed many, many, many billions of dollars for what is globally called the Clico bailout, but it's really a bailout of CL Financial, because it is CL Financial, Mr. Dupree, as the head of CL Financial, not the head of Clico, the head of CL Financial, that came to the government in 2009 and asked the government to bail out CL Financial and Clico as a principal member of CL Financial. But you also had Clico Investment Bank and other members of that CL Financial group. And when we did a tally some time ago, we were owed about $31 billion, somewhere around there. And we've got back about 18. So we are looking to get the difference, okay? And one of the ways we could get that difference is that when Clico is sold, because we're asking the liquidator to sell the whole thing with us, so they will sell their 51%, we will sell our 49%. Whatever the proceeds are that the liquidator would get, then we will get some repayment for our bailout of CL Financial. And as I said, we are still owed many, many, many billions of dollars for that. But it will help us because the country did take a hit with the CL Financial bailout that cost the country a lot of money. The country has not recovered it. That was taxpayers' money. So that we are going to sell Clico to try and recover part of what is still owed to the government for the CL Financial bailout.
Minister, I have 3 questions left.
You sure?
And I'll be slow. The first one, do you think your current policies have been enough and will be enough to drive the diversification of the TNT economy?
Well, that's an interesting question, because as Minister of Finance, I've always been given this responsibility. But that is really a responsibility of the Ministry of Trade and Industry. What we do at Finance is that we facilitate in terms of fiscal incentives. That's what we do. And a lot of the fiscal incentives that we create are based on requests coming from the Ministry of Trade and Industry or one of the entities like the Chamber of Commerce or the TTMA, so that it is not my responsibility to diversify the economy. Of course, it's a major part of my job, but it's not my sole responsibility. And I always wonder why this Minister of Finance is always told that he is responsible for diversifying the economy. But in terms of what we've done to help the Ministry of Trade and now what we're doing to help the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Agriculture in terms of fiscal incentives, I am satisfied. It's a difficult process. We are an oil and gas economy. We have been an oil and gas economy since the mid-1970s. So you're talking 40 plus years. And people have become accustomed to earning their income based directly on the oil and gas industry or some spin-off or some derivative of the oil and gas industry. And it has taken a while for people to get into manufacturing and export manufacturing of non-oil products. But I must say, and I have to congratulate the Minister of Trade for this, that we've seen tremendous growth in the manufacturing export sector over the last 5 to 6 years based on our fiscal policies, that where we have assisted the Ministry of Trade in terms of a number of tax concessions and promotional activities overseas and so on. And the Minister of Trade is also always trying to get duty-free access to various countries for our exporters and so on. But I want to stress that the diversification of the economy is not only my responsibility. It's a whole of government approach.
Second question. Was the 2025 budget your swan song, or are you prepared to stay in office if your party is successful in the next general election?
I think I said that in my wrap-up to the budget speech. Were you listening? I will repeat what I said. This was my 10th budget, and I'll be back for my 11th budget. I thought I was clear.
I think we needed to hear it again.
Okay, you can hear it tomorrow too if you want to.
And my last question. What are your views on the U.S. elections, and do you think a Trump victory will change engagement with Venezuela for natural
It
gas?
has nothing to do with property tax, revenue authority, foreign exchange, HSF, or any of the things I spoke about. I really don't want to talk about that because I don't know who's going to win. I looked at the polls this morning and it's dead heat, and you have all the pollsters talking about margin of error and who is right and who is wrong. And you know, there's a theory that Trump voters are not as engaged to polling as Harris voters, so that Democratic voters might respond in greater numbers than Republican voters, so they're not sure what's going on. So you see me, I will just wait for the results and then we could talk. Okay? Of course, I have my favorite, which I will not say, but you could figure out who it is. Okay? Younger generation.
So I do have one question from Natalie St. Tobago Channel 5.
Sure.
She's asking, what are your views on the state of the economy as it is now?
Well, I mean, we've had 3 years of consecutive growth, real growth. We are challenged because of the volatile nature of energy prices, of petrochemical prices, oil prices, gas prices. We are very challenged. We're challenged because we are what is called a mature energy province. So our oil fields are old, our gas fields are old, and even some of our petrochemical plants are quite old. So we have a lot of challenges there in terms of production. Prices are very volatile, but I am very confident that the work that is being done by some of the smaller companies, I saw something on TV, I think, 2 days ago, or maybe it was even last night, where Touchstone is producing gas and is now putting natural gas into the national grid, as it were, and so on. So there's a lot going on with small and medium-sized oil and gas operators, and of course, we have the entire Venezuelan province, which we expect to be able to exploit or to share in as a better world within the next 2 years or so. So I'm comfortable with the way where the economy is. It's because of production problems and because of price problems. Things are going to need a lot of intense management over the next 2 years, not the last 2 years. But we've been there, done that. I mean, we went through COVID, we survived that. We went through the 2016 to 2018 period where oil dropped to $20, we survived that. So I think we as a country can survive, and the economy is now on a solid footing. It has a growth momentum, and I think we'll be okay. We just need a lot of very careful management.
How many
Okay.
questions pending at this time?
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
The winning numbers